Hello and welcome. I'm Alma Angeles and you're watching Eagle News International.
And I'm CJ here. Welcome to the program. On tonight's headlines.
Philippine President Rodrigo Duterte has reimposed a ban on children aged 10 to 14 leaving home, telling them to watch TV instead as the country battles an outbreak of a new coronavirus strain.
The WHO warns of continued transmission of the coronavirus even with the vaccines.
Chinese President Xi Jinping warns global leaders at an all-virtual Davos forum against starting a new Cold War and urges global unity in the face of the pandemic.
And a rare winter storm combination of snow, torrential rain, hail, and biting cold creates hazardous driving conditions in Southern California.
Philippine President Rodrigo Duterte has reimposed a ban on children aged 10 to 14 leaving home, telling them to watch TV instead as the country battles an outbreak of a new coronavirus strain. Stay-at-home orders for all children and the elderly have been kept in place across most of the country since the start of the pandemic, even as the economy reopened after crippling lockdowns and restrictions. Take a look.
I am compelled. It has nothing to do with the incompetence, not at all. Ang akin is a precaution because there was or is a strain discovered in the Cordillera na that is very similar to the strain dito sa United Kingdom. How it got there is beyond me. Hindi ko talaga bakit dumating doon. Workers are really competent enough to determine this situation existing. So, balik ko kayo sa bahay muna. And besides, yung 10 years old to 14, itong medyo matanda na mahirap ito i-manage. But itong mga 10, 11, 12, pwede na yan sila sa TV. Pasensya na po kayo. Mine is just a precaution. Wala itong bisa. Takot lang ako kasi itong bagong strain strikes the young children. Itong original na COVID, hardly if at all, na wala kang marinig na may bata. Meron 1 or 2, and you can count it by the fingers of your hands. Kung ilan ang bata natin na. Pero ngayon, according to the studies, balita lang mala nitong United Kingdom, na nag-warning si Johnson, yung Prime Minister nila, that it can that kind of affliction can walang limit sa edad kung ilan. So it does not have any cut off there. So just to be sure, and in our desire to protect our people, napilitan akong i-reimpose yung 10 to 14. Not at this time.
The president also urged the public to be religious in observing health and safety protocols such as wearing of face masks, face shields, frequent hand washing, and physical distancing as confirmed cases in the country reached 514,996 on Monday. While some Filipinos could afford getting treated for COVID-19, he pointed out that there were many who could barely pay for hospital expenses.
In other news, White House Health Advisor Dr. Anthony Fauci said that so far, no evidence mutations alter effectiveness of current vaccines. No coronavirus strains first identified in the United Kingdom and South Africa have caused some concerns among scientists who say the mutated variants are highly infectious, though they don't appear to be any deadlier compared with previous strains. Let's listen in.
But let me get back to the variant that's now dominant in the Republic of South Africa. That's a bit more problematic, John, because when we've looked at it and a number of papers are coming out on the preprint journals that are showing that when it comes to the monoclonal antibodies, several of them are completely negated in their efficacy by the mutation, and there seems to be a considerable more threat to vaccine efficacy, even though the cushion of efficacy is sound enough that the vaccines that we're using now will be good against both the mutant in South Africa as well as in the UK. Having said that, this is an evolving situation. So what we need to do and are doing are already looking at making upgraded versions of the vaccine that could address both the South African mutant as well as the one in the UK. So even though right now the vaccines seem to be able to work against them, we need to be prepared to upgrade, and maybe even as a boost later on, or as a bivalent vaccine that goes against both the wild type and the evolving mutants. Negative impact on us. And it began a long time ago, John, when it was clear among the scientists who are my colleagues, who I know, who I speak to, were saying, this is really different. It's not a virus that just jumps from an animal reservoir to a human and is very ineffective in going from human to human. It goes very effectively from human to human. And the critical issue that we didn't realize first, that if there had been transparency, it would have profoundly influenced policies. And that is that at least half of the infections are transmitted by somebody who has no symptoms at all. There are still things that we don't know right now about the origin. Understanding the origin would really be important. And we don't know it now. It's a big black box.
Meanwhile, American biotechnology company Moderna firm said its COVID-19 vaccine is effective against the UK and South Africa variants. Take a look.
In other news, Panama is giving seniors easier access to health care. As Eagle News correspondent May Davila reports, people over the age of 60 can now consult with their doctors without having to leave their homes. Watch this.
The Ministerio de Salud implements a pilot plan to strengthen the first level of care through teleconsultation within the framework of primary health care. The main objective is to provide remote-controlled health care with qualified medical personnel to people over 60 years of age with chronic diseases at home. Teleconsultation makes it possible to increase access to health, improve preventive care, decrease missed appointments, and reduce patient waiting time. The project will prioritize the San Miguelito region and the metropolitan region in the Torrijos Carter Health Centers, the Nuevo Veranillo Health Center, and the Parque Lefebvre Policentro. The project is divided into two phases. Contact the patient through telephone calls according to a database managed by the Ministerio de Salud in established areas for comprehensive health care according to their illness and prescription of medications. request for laboratories electronically so that patients can collect them at their nearest health centers. The ministry plans to extend the service consultation through teleconsultation to the Panama Este, Panama Norte, Panama Oeste regions in approximately 1 month. This initiative from the government will be very beneficial for the healthcare of the elderly because older adults are at higher risk of complications and mortality from COVID-19. Yet, they require a continuity of care to control chronic conditions and minimize hospital admissions and emergency situations. Teleconsultation protects patients and healthcare workers from unnecessary potential exposure to COVID-19 while allowing for continuity of healthcare. Desde Ciudad de Panama, Nida Avila, Eagle News. Vivimos en tiempos interesantes.
President Duterte on Monday night challenged critics claiming of corruption in the government's COVID-19 vaccine procurement to face him. The president said there were some individuals who accused his administration of anomalies in vaccine procurement since they could not get any kickbacks from vaccine czar Carlito Galvez Jr. Let's listen in.
10 years old, revenue. Merong iba dyan because wala silang nakuha kay Galvez, kaya wala man talaga, walang pera, laway pa lang ito lahat, conversation, istorya. Meron na nagsabi may corruption o na they were able to obstruct or prevent corruption because of their timely alam mo, bulador ka. Mag-usap nga tayo. Tayo lang. Kung sino nagsabi niyan, please rise and be brave enough to say that you're the one. I'd like to talk to you. Tayo lang dalawa. Maski saan mo gusto, sa bahay mo, para medyo maganda ang usapan o hindi sa labas kasi bawal. Pinapalabas na napigilan namin yung corruption timely dahil sa wala pa sinasabi na ang bayad dyan maging anuman pera na cold cash or papel lang yan, hindi yan magpadala ng pera doon, ng papel yan sa bangko yan, that it will be credited sa account kung sinong manufacturer. Hindi hawak walang hawak ng pera dyan. Actually. Kaya dyan ako kasi walang nakuha. And they're still trying to prick the brains of Galvez, looking for something which is not there at all.
Meanwhile, in Japan, 15,000 people are on waiting lists for hospital accommodations after testing positive for COVID-19. Dennis Liu gives us an update on that. Dennis.
At least 15,058 people were on waiting list for a hospital or designated accommodation after testing positive for the novel coronavirus earlier this month in the 11 prefectures covered by a state of emergency. A Kyodo News survey has found as public health centers have been swamped with a surge in cases. A growing number of patients on waiting lists have died at home. The number waiting as of last Tuesday marks a sharp increase from a month earlier, including in Tokyo, where it almost quintupled. Local public health centers are tasked with arranging hospitalization or accommodation for people infected with the virus. But as the number of newly infected people has been rising sharply since November, the arrangements have been taking longer and more infected people have been forced to wait at home amid bed shortages, with some dying at home. The survey showed that Tokyo had the most infected people waiting to be hospitalized or accommodated at other facilities among the 11 prefectures, jumping by a factor of 4.8 from 1,563 as of December 19th to 7,539. Hyogo Prefecture has seen its number increase by a factor of 5.8 to 727 people. Every prefecture has seen similar rise. Two of Tokyo's neighboring prefectures, Saitama and Chiba, had 1,169 and 2,328 respectively, while there were 1,410 in Osaka. Meanwhile, Japan will commence random mass PCR testing as early as March as part of efforts to ascertain the extent of the novel coronavirus spread in city areas. Government sources said Monday the central government is aiming to conduct up to several thousand polymerase chain reaction tests per day in Tokyo, Osaka, and other metropolitan areas, seeing a high number of cases with the goal of using the information to develop effective virus prevention measures. In contrast with local government testing that only targets people who show symptoms or have had close contact with infected individuals, random people will be tested to determine how much the virus has spread in a particular city. The cost of the test will be carried out by contracted private companies, will be fully covered by the central government. The tests are expected to be conducted at airports as well as places where crowds tend to gather, such as city centers, companies, and universities. From Tokyo, Japan, this is Dennis Liu for Eagle News. We live in interesting times.
Meanwhile, Thailand has recorded more new COVID-19 cases following a mass testing. In Samut Sakhon, joining us live from ABC Thailand Bureau, here's Crystal Mapa. Hello, Crystal.
Yes, Alma. From the 914 cases reported in Samut Sakhon on Monday, the highest daily number since the province was found to be the epicenter of the second wave. 844 were found through active case finding. Out of the 844, 760 cases were detected among foreign migrant workers, while the rest were Thais. These confirmed cases were reported as the Center for COVID-19 Situation Administration, or CCSA, hinted that it may begin relaxing disease control measures in some provinces. According to the province's Public Relations Office, the latest report brought the total number of confirmed cases in Samut Sakhon alone to 6,555. Assistant spokesperson for the CCSA, Dr. Apisamay Srisangsun, earlier on Monday said the public health officials are aiming to test 10,000 people a day in Samut Sakhon until the end of the month. As active case finding has been stepped up, it is likely that the province will report high numbers of confirmed cases, she said. Dr. Apisamay was asked if Samut Sakhon is ready to cope with the expected increase, and she answered that additional 400 beds will be added today and 1,000 more will be added on Friday in its provincial field hospital, which has 1,091 beds currently available. A factory of a private company has also allowed to be used as a field hospital, which will be able to accommodate 2,000 patients once it is ready. Some provinces may ease some restrictions according to Dr. Apisamay, which will be based on information sent by provincial governors and local health authorities who are working closely with CCSA. She also added that tighter curbs may be subjected to those provinces that are in red zone areas. It is originally planned to reopen the Central Shrimp Market tomorrow, Alma, but as the number of infections around the market remains high, it is unlikely to happen. Meanwhile, Mr. Anutin Charnvirakul, the Deputy Prime Minister and Public Health Minister, said on Monday that the Public Health Ministry will present its recommendations for reopening to the CCSA with a focus on the economic impact on business operators. The CCSA will make the final decision on how the restrictions will be eased, Mr. Anatin said. Back to you, Alma.
All right. Thank you very much, Cristel, for your time and for your update there in Thailand. Stay safe.
You too, Alma. Reporting live from Thailand, I am Crystal Mapa. We live in interesting times.
Meanwhile, the WHO warns of continued transmission of the coronavirus, even with vaccines. Dr. Michael Ryan agreed that COVID-19 is likely to become endemic in the global population. Vaccinations, he explained, do not guarantee that infectious diseases will be eradicated. Let's listen in.
Presence of the disease and the fact that we're not seemingly able to implement comprehensive long-term measures to contain and control the disease. The availability of vaccines right now is not optimal, and in that sense, the current availability and for the foreseeable future, the coverage of vaccines will not reach a point where it will stop transmission, not necessarily. So we're likely to have continued transmission. The advantage we have right now, based on the targets that the vaccine has in terms of its efficacy, is we can significantly and very, very greatly reduce mortality, reduce severe illness, reduce the impact this has in our societies and on our loved ones and on those who are most vulnerable. And in that sense, we can return to normal life. Will this disease continue to transmit? Most likely for a long time. Unless we find the kind of compliance and the kind of vaccine coverage that will be required to achieve that. If vaccine coverage lags behind, particularly in younger adults, then yes, we will struggle to eradicate this disease. But remember, we've only ever eradicated one disease on this planet, smallpox.
And we have more coronavirus updates. In Ireland, the country is planning to vaccinate all its citizens by September. Here's Rowana Bianca Arino for the details.
Ireland plans to deliver vaccines to all citizens by September. Health Minister Stephen Donnelly tells lawmakers in the Dáil Chamber of Parliament. Let's listen.
Ultimately, as I've said before, we're planning our program based on a supply of vaccines that would mean that every citizen can be vaccinated by September. So that's what we're working. But I would just re-emphasize that even these timelines, they're based on assumptions for the future delivery of other vaccines, including at this point AstraZeneca, which have yet to be approved. The other vaccines have yet to, the companies haven't even applied for approval yet. So these are tentative timelines. But
the plan is a tentative one based on the predicted arrival of new vaccines in the nation, some of which have yet to be approved by the EU regulators. These are tentative timelines, he told lawmakers, adding that he expected mass vaccination centers to open across the Republic in early February. Ireland does not yet publish daily figures outlining delivery of the Pfizer, BioNTech, and Moderna vaccines currently approved for use in the general population. However, Donnelly said 94,000 had received the first dose of vaccine by Sunday and plans on course to deliver 140,000 by the end of this week. After navigating two previous waves of the virus with low death and case figures, the nation now has the highest per capita rate of infection in the world, according to Oxford University data. The country of 5 million is currently in the midst of a third lockdown, with non-essential shops, pubs, restaurants, and schools shut for at least the month of January. I'm Rowana Bianca Arino, correspondent in the Republic of Ireland, and we live in interesting times.
In other news, Prime Minister Giuseppe Conte has resigned in the hope of forming a new government after weeks of turmoil in his ruling coalition, leaving Italy rudderless as it battles the deadly coronavirus pandemic. The uneasy coalition that has led Italy since September 2019 was fatally weakened earlier this month by the withdrawal of former Premier Matteo Renzi's small but crucial Italia Viva party, ahead of a key vote in Parliament this week that he looked set to lose. Conte's office announced he would step down Tuesday in what supporters said was a move to form a new government. Conte's government has been on the verge of collapse since Renzi pulled out on January 13 in a row over the premier's handling of the pandemic. Renzi, in particular, warned he risked wasting the EU funds with a 220 billion euro spending plan that he said failed to address Italy's long-term structural issues. The Prime Minister survived a vote of confidence in Parliament last week, but failed to secure an overall majority in the upper house, the Senate. Despite days of talks with senators to seek their support, he looked set to lose a crucial vote on judicial reform in the coming days.
In Vietnam, the first national Congress since 2016 began. The Congress will shape future policy and select a new set of leaders. Charlene Navaja joins us live. Charlene?
Hello again, Alma.
Hello.
Good evening. And yes, that's right. Vietnam's ruling Communist Party gathered on Monday for its first National Congress since 2016. Nearly 1,600 delegates will approve future policy and select new leaders amid talks over whether the current party chief will stay. It is the 13th Congress since Communist Party was established in 1930. And the Congress will take place over 9 days of mostly closed-door meetings. New leadership for Vietnam will not just mean potential changes to domestic policy, but will also impact relations between China and the United States, as Vietnam has become an important strategic partner for both countries. General Secretary Nguyen Pho Trong, 76, won a second term in 2016 and has garnered favor by presiding over economic growth and waging a popular war on corruption. He has been struggling with bad health, but is expected to continue a third term. Another contender to remain in a key post is Prime Minister Nguyen Xuan Phuc, who has focused on the country's economic growth and integration, securing a number of international trade deals. The 66-year-old, tipped by analysts to now take the presidency, has also steered the country's robust response to the coronavirus pandemic. Regardless of who is chosen, the world should not expect major policy changes, according to Murray Hibert of the Southeast Asia Program at the Center for Strategic and International Studies in Washington. So China has in recent years reinforced its claim to the contested waterway by building up small shoals and reefs into military bases, much to the displeasure of Hanoi, which also claims part of the resource-rich sea. Trade tensions with the U.S. will also be high on the priority list after Washington accused Hanoi of currency manipulation last month. Congress attendees were subjected to rigorous coronavirus prevention screenings and were also tested twice for the virus in the days leading up to the gathering, in order to preserve Vietnam's heavily praised progress in fighting the pandemic. So Vietnam has reported just over 1,500 cases, Alma, and 35 deaths since the start of pandemic. Back to you, Alma.
All right. Thank you very much for your time. I know you're in a hurry. Thank you so much. Stay safe, stay healthy, always.
Yeah, you too. So this has been Charlene Navaja reporting live from Hanoi, Vietnam. We live in interesting times.
A residential building has been seriously damaged by an explosion in Madrid. At least 3 people died in that blast, which was reported to be caused by a gas leak. Our EBC correspondent gives us a picture of the aftermath of that explosion. Here's Catherine Ferrer Arceo.
In the middle of a pandemic and after recovering from the great snow, Madrid is suffering from an explosion on a very centric street of the capital.
A strong explosion was heard on 90 Toledo Street, 1 kilometer from the Royal Palace, which caused the death of 4 people and 11 injured. The explosion destroyed a large part of the building that belonged to a parish residence. According to the neighbors, the cause of the explosion was a gas leak. The same day, the radiators didn't work and smelled like gas all morning. A priest and the technician, who both died, were the ones who checked the building's boiler for the problems they were having.
The building is in front of a school, where luckily, for the reasons of the snow, the pupils were not on the backyard, where enough material fell from the explosion. And next to the building is a nursing home, but they have all been unharmed. Reporting from Madrid, Spain, I am Caterina Arceo. We live in interesting times.
And James Bond star Daniel Craig is calling on the international community to rally behind the Cambodian government in order to achieve a landmine-free Cambodia by the year 2025. Crystal Ann Ballesteros reports. Crystal?
Good evening, Alma, and to all our online viewers around the world. That's correct. Craig virtually joined the UNDP Cambodia organized launch of Cambodia's first Safe Ground campaign in Battambang province on January 22. The project's goal is to turn minefields into playing fields. And I quote, "Safe ground is a fundamental human right. I know there's a lot of work remaining to achieve the 2025 goal of a mine-free Cambodia, and it can't be achieved without a sustained commitment and increased resources. With a clear deadline in sight, now is the time for the international community to rally behind the royal government of Cambodia and fulfill all of their previous commitments. Please join me in supporting the Mine Action Authority and the United Nations to see that the job is finished. And to all the men and women at the front line who carry out this necessary crucial work, I extend my personal thanks and gratitude. I wish them all health, safety, and happiness in 2021." End of quote. Craig said in his remarks for the occasion. Meanwhile, Lee Toit, First Vice President of the Cambodian Mine Action and Victim Assistance Authority, or CMAA, said that from 1960 until 1998, Cambodia faced a series of internal and regional conflicts which left landmines and explosive remnants of war, or ERW, strewn across the country. Mines and ERW had claimed nearly 20,000 lives and injured over 45,000 others, causing ongoing suffering to individuals, their families, and communities. Over a 27-year period, the Cambodian government had spent over $160 million on mine clearance, while the international donor community had contributed over $216 million, Tuch said. He said Cambodia is facing operational and financial challenges due to the pandemic, and he called for increased international support in order for the kingdom to meet the 2025 mine-free goal. Tuch said Cambodia had 2,152 square meters of land impacted by the presence of landmines and ERW, an area 3 times the size of Singapore, and to make Cambodia mine-free by 2025, the country must clear the remaining 835 square meters contaminated by landmines, or just over 1 Singapore in area. Tuch noted that even with the generous support of development partners, Cambodia currently faces a shortfall of $225 million from 2021 to 2025, adding that Prime Minister Hun Sen wanted to meet Craig and thank him personally should he ever visit Cambodia in the future. UN Resident Coordinator to Cambodia, Pauline Tameses, congratulated the Cambodian government on its strong, forward-looking, and ambitious national mine action strategy, and said it is now time to step up support for this initiative to ensure Cambodia's future is free of landmines. Let's watch this.
Across the world, playgrounds are seen as safe places where children can play with freedom and joy. But in some countries, this is not the case. In Cambodia, the legacy of war continues. Millions of explosive items are littered across the country and still injure and kill people, and this includes children. The fact that they are known to exist creates fear, anxiety, and insecurity. The Safe Ground campaign transforms mine-contaminated lands into safe sports facilities where young people can play. It aims to bring attention and resources to survivors of explosive ordnance. I am happy to announce the opening of the new Safe Ground in Cambodia, and I look forward to when I will be able to visit in person. I strongly support the United Nations Safe Ground campaign and hope that you will too.
UN Resident Coordinator to Cambodia, Pauline Tamesis, congratulated the Cambodian government on its strong, forward-looking and ambitious national mine action strategy and said it is now time to step up support for the initiative to ensure Cambodia's future is free of landmines. Back to you, Alma.
All right. Thank you very much, Crystal, for that report. Stay safe always.
You too, Alma. Reporting live here in Phnom Penh, Cambodia, I am Crystal Ann Ballesteros, and we live in interesting times.
In Australia this time, thousands of residents defied coronavirus rules on Tuesday in Sydney to protest the country's National Day, held on the anniversary of British colonization of the vast continent that its indigenous population brands Invasion Day. The gathering remained mostly peaceful despite the crowd breaching COVID-19 public health orders, with organizers deciding to call off a planned march. But a smaller group of protesters marched to a nearby park, and at least 3 people were arrested by police after being ordered to disperse. Officially recognized as Australia Day, January 26 also sees annual rallies drawing attention to the injustices faced by Indigenous people and calling on the government to change the date of the National Day. The rally also heard from speakers including Litona Dungay, the mother of David Dungay, who died while being restrained by prison guards in 2015.
In other news, a rare winter storm combination of snow, torrential rain, hail, and biting cold created hazardous driving conditions in Southern California. Take a look. The winter storm warning. And the news continues here on Eagle News. We'll be right back.
This portion is brought to you by Canriv Corporation, your ventilation and air conditioning specialist. Services offered: supply and installation of elevators, escalators, air conditioners, ventilators, jet towel, hand dryers, generators, access control system, factory automation, and modernization. For more info, please contact Ami Kanke at 0915-263-7198 or 0998-900-3224.
Mula noon hanggang ngayon, gabay natin ang MTRCB ratings sa matalino at responsableng panonood. Sa tamang pagsunod sa MTRCB ratings, ginagawa nating ligtas at makabuluhan ang panonood ng bawat miyembro ng pamilyang Pilipino. Lumipas man ang panahon, hanggang may pamilyang Pilipino, andyan ang MTRCB.
This portion is brought to you by Kubert, an expert in air conditioning and electromechanical, also engaged in structural, electrical, fire protection, plumbing, and sanitary services. Kubert, your ultimate MEPS air conditioning solutions.
Welcome back to the news. Britain's unemployment rate hit 5% at the end of 2020, the highest level for more than 4.5 decades, or 4.5 years. We have Aribel Celestino from our EBC UK Bureau with that report. Aribel.
Hi, CJ, and yes, Britain's unemployment rate 5.0% at the end of 2020, the highest level for more than 4.5 years as coronavirus lockdowns destroyed jobs. Official data showed on Tuesday. The rate for 3 months to the end of November compares with 4.9% in the quarter to October, the Office for National Statistics said in a statement. At 5.0%, the figure is 1.2 percentage points above the same period a year earlier, to reach the highest level since April 2016, the ONS added. Finance Minister Rishi Sunak said that this critical situation has gone further than expected. Every lost job is a tragedy. CJ, analysts expect unemployment to surge further when the UK government's furlough scheme, paying the bulk of wages for millions of private sector workers, stopped at the end of April. ONS Head of Economic Statistics Sam Beckett noted that job vacancies, which were rising in summer and early autumn, have been falling in the last couple of months. Well, the ONS added that between February last year, ahead of Britain's first lockdown, and December, the number of payroll employees dived by 828,000. The data comes one day after administrators for collapsed UK department store chain Debenhams said it planned to shut all its outlets, costing around 12,000 jobs. While Debenhams had struggled with fierce online competition long before the coronavirus pandemic, Britain's bricks and mortar retailers are in turmoil after a series of lockdowns. Capital economics analyst Thomas Hughes said that the labor market is likely to continue to weaken over the rest of this year, particularly when the furlough scheme is over, CJ. Financial researchers, the EY Item Club predicted that the unemployment rate could shoot up to 7.0% by the middle of the year, though that would still represent a better outcome than first expected. In a note to the clients, it is said that this peak is lower and later than it was expected before the furlough scheme had been extended beyond its original ending date of October 2020. Well, CJ, it is believed that Sunak does not want a further extension with the UK government borrowing soaring by unexpected amounts. Back to you, CJ.
Thank you so much, Aribel. Just a quick question. Are there any updates on the lifting of the current lockdown and schools?
Well, it isn't clear at the moment when Prime Minister Boris Johnson will actually lift the current lockdown, CJ, since there are suggestions that it may not occur until around Easter. And in terms of school, the UK government is facing a growing pressure to detail strategy to reopen schools in England, with a followed backlash from lawmakers about reports that they could remain closed for months. Over to you, CJ.
All right, thank you so much, Aribel. Please do stay safe over there, and we wish you all the best over there. And well, you have the vaccines happening there right now. Hopefully that will help bring things back to normal.
Thank you so much, CJ, for having me. Reporting from the United Kingdom, I am Aribel Celestino. We live in interesting times.
Meanwhile, the U.S. Senate on Monday voted by a wide margin to confirm Janet Yellen as the first woman to lead the Treasury Department, giving her a key role in Congress negotiations over a huge COVID-19 economic relief package. Yellen is not new to the role of trailblazer, as she also was the first woman to lead the Federal Reserve from 2014 to 2018 and previously the White House Council of Economic Advisors. Her immediate job in the first weeks of the new new administration will be to help win Congress approval for President Joe Biden's $1.9 trillion rescue package to secure U.S. economic recovery from the pandemic. That will entail convincing skeptical lawmakers that the benefit of more spending outweighs concerns about the country's soaring debt level. Yellen also will have a role in enforcing trade rules and repairing relations after the multi-front trade wars pursued by former President Trump. In the most contentious relations with China, Yellen last week pledged to use all available tools to address China's abusive, unfair, and illegal practices that undermine the U.S. economy.
Meanwhile, the coronavirus pandemic took a massive toll on the global labor market last year, the International Labor Organization says, with the equivalent of more than 250 million jobs lost. Here's Man Glauser of our ABC Switzerland Bureau with that report. Man.
Hi, CJ. Yes, so new UN data on the economic impact of COVID-19 has confirmed what many have been thinking. Workers haven't been hit like this in generations. According to the International Labor Organization, ILO, people trying to earn a living suffered massively in 2020 after the coronavirus started spreading globally early last year. ILO Director General Guy Ryder told journalists on Monday that the impact has been 4 times worse than the last major financial crisis over a decade ago. Let's take a look. These lost working hours came from reduced time at work or what ILO called unprecedented levels of unemployment that affected 114 million people. The ILO said that the pandemic restrictions may have accounted for the bulk of these people leaving the labor market either because they were unable to work or because they stopped looking. The UN body said that these massive losses resulted in an 8.3% drop in global income from work, equivalent to $3.7 trillion or 4.4% of the world's economy, not taking into account cash subsidies for workers. The worst affected sector has been accommodation and food services, where employment declined by more than 20% on average, followed by retail and manufacturing. In contrast, employment in information communication and finance and insurance increased in the second and third quarters of 2020. Marginal increases were also seen in mining, quarrying, and utilities. While there is still a high degree of uncertainty, the latest projections for 2021 show that most countries will experience a relatively strong recovery in the second half of the year as vaccination programs take effect. Back to you, CJ.
Thank you so much, Maan. Please do stay safe over there, and thank you so much for your report. Looking forward to more reports out of there from Switzerland.
Yes, thank you for having me again, CJ. I'm Ann Glauser reporting from the Geneva, Switzerland Bureau, and we live in interesting times.
Thank you.
And finally, in our news, Chinese President Xi Jinping warned global leaders at an all-virtual Davos forum against starting a new Cold War and urged global unity in the face of the pandemic. Let's listen in.
国际上搞小圈子、新冷战、排斥、威胁、恐吓他人，动不动就搞脱钩、断供、制裁。 人为造成相互隔离甚至隔绝，只能把世界推向分裂甚至对抗。当今世界如果走对立对抗的歧路，无论是搞冷战、热战，还是贸易战、科技战，最终将损害各国利益，牺牲人民福祉。
In a swipe at moves targeting China launched by the previous U.S. administration under President Donald Trump, President Xi said confrontation will always end up harming every nation's interests and sacrificing people's welfare. Xi also called for stronger global governance via multilateral organizations, the removal of barriers to international trade, investment, and tech exchanges, as well as stronger representation on the world stage for developing countries. He stressed the importance of strengthening macroeconomic policies to combat the pandemic-induced global economic downturn.
And that's it for tonight's broadcast. Thank you so much for joining us. I am CJ Hero. Please join us again tomorrow.
And at the end of the day, there remains so much more to be grateful for. I'm Alma Angeles, and
we live in interesting times.